So sometimes you have to honestly ask yourself, why do you do this to yourself? Why? And please note, I'm still a new author. I might have a book out. It's a lovely book. It's one I really, really love. But as I'll make the point in this, you're not considered an established author in history until you've got about until you're on your fourth book, basically. 3 published and the 4th one being written, and then you might be considered an established author. So I, at the grand old age of 34, nearly 35, am a newbie. I'm a newbie. And I love this book. But there are some things I was lucky about, in that I had a wonderful Professor Andrew Lambert who backed me up the whole way through. And I've had the wonderful examples of Michael Partridge, who unfortunately is no longer with us, and Glenn Richardson, who is an amazing historian. If you're doing Renaissance history and you're not reading the works of Glenn Richardson, then I don't even know why you're bothering. He's that good. And anyone who tries to argue differently will, in my comment section, will get told to go buy his books and actually read them. But you want to write a history book. This is what this video is about. So you want to write. Why write a book? Well, the first thing is there is some history that needs to be told. In my case, the last decent book published about these ships was in 1957. And as great as it was, it has no real referencing, nothing in there, and even I haven't used Bryce's book in this work without double, treble, and quadruple checking other source material to back it up, and that's why it's usually double to treble referenced in the citations. Because it's wonderful, but it's not really sourced. So you can't use it. And it was literally about the tribals. And it didn't put them in the context of what else came before it, what came after it, and the context of their actions and what they were as a white ogre. It was a wonderful book. It is a wonderful book, and I have it, and I will always treasure it, and I refer to it regularly. But it is a collection of individual ship stories. And that didn't do it a class service to me. It treated them as the cogs in the machine, but didn't look at the machine they were. As an academic, we publish or perish. That is still very true. Now, I'm dyslexic, which means I'm slower to write and be happy with my writing than most. Which is one of the reasons why I'm so glad I have found YouTube now, because that allows me to bump up my number of publications quite dramatically, because it turns out what I am good at, and always have been good at, is talking to people and talking about history. And so I can do stuff on YouTube whilst also doing writing, and I can maintain my pace of writing at about the same pace it always was. Slightly less, because there are some hours over to YouTube, but it's still there. Whereas some of my colleagues, they don't have that option. But it's still a hard slog going from contract lecturer to probably junior lecturer or fellowship or postdoc, as it sometimes, if you're earlier in your career than me. I'm now too far from my PhD to do a postdoc, according to most of the postdocs, if you try and apply for them. And you want to get forward, these are what things you have to do in your career. Publish or perish. You're bored and it's something to do. The amount of history books, and great history books, which get written by people who are retired and are doing something to keep themselves interested. One of the greatest historians of our era, Andrew Boyd, British naval intelligence, author of Naval Intelligence in the 20th Century, British, the Royal Navy and Eastern Waters, all those sort of books. As he said in his own podcast with Bilge Pumps Crew, he was at the point in his life where he was comfortable and could afford to do it. And it interested him. As a bet, yes, I won't name them, but I know at least 4 people who've written history books as a bet. Two of them actually did quite well. We can all be worried about that one. Anything else you care to think of for about roughly 95 reasons? And then to make money is the last one, because, as we're going to get into, it's not exactly a good road to go on that one. So, get used to rejection. Here are the simple stats. The odds are calculated by various sources to be roughly 1 in 4 of all history book submissions put forward for a book. 1 in 4 will be accepted. My own story is roughly. I tried 2 different versions of my PhD thesis, 2 different versions of the tribal book of a pure tribal book, and then a tribal battle and darings book, and I've tried a Henderson book, and I've tried all sorts of things. But basically, TBD is my 6th book submission, which I started putting around. And if you include the first versions of the tribals, which were submitted as the first version of this book, then you can argue it was successful. Take it down to 4, and it was successful on its 3rd attempt. Of those, 1 in 3 will actually be published. I know of many, many good historians who have, even after they've got contracts, have failed to actually get the books published because they've broken down halfway through. It just hasn't panned out. There's been some reason. It's just failed. Edited books are a nightmare, and every time you read those and go, why are these so expensive? Because they are horrendous to organize. They are difficult to get coordinated, and you can have 1 or 2 authors be late, and it can all fall apart. It really is a finely tuned balancing act. And of those, a little as 1 in 5 might be judged to be successful. Now, what is successful? Well, the bare minimum for success is a book which sells enough copies to pay back the advance to the publisher and the outlay of costs. There is a few levels beyond that. But what's worse is, honestly, that success is outside of the publishers, and it's outside of the authors really control. We can do everything we can to make it as quality as possible. Gorgeous inside and out. I'm being shameless. It's my first baby, first book. I mean, don't worry, Mum. Someday I will hopefully work on grandchildren, but this is it you've got for the moment. If I can find a girlfriend, well, partner. We'll leave that to one side. Anyway, there's much we do, but it's going to depend on Amazon reviews, how well you're known, how much circulation you have as an author and as your book has, and also journal reviews. People will review these books for journals all the time. So your academic success from your book will depend on what people in journals write about your book. If they write your book is great, you will get lauded by your peers in in various departments, going, yes, yes, you must refer to Clarke. It's wonderful. The book's amazing. If it gets panned, oh, you cited Clarke in your essay. Terrible. Amazon reviews. I don't know why they count so much, but they do. And it's the algorithm, let's be honest, that they count so much. So basically, every 5-star review, I'm told, on average, can add up to an extra 30 sales. And it goes down like, and that's a rough analysis given to me by a very harried looking person who was in charge of distribution of books for actually not the publishers who published my book, but for another publishers who I happened to meet at a dinner and was chatting away with. And they were having real trouble because they produced a very expensive book, and it was a very good book, and I liked it. And I gave it a 5-star review on Amazon. But it was getting panned quite heavily because it disagreed with one of the more popular names in that field. It's not naval history, it's a land history. And then they were suffering because of it, because basically the more popular name had slammed it on Twitter, didn't agree with it, and lots of people had gone in and were putting it down. And that's one of the things why I'm also always very conscious of what I say about colleagues in terms of when I'm talking on Twitter, when I'm talking on YouTube, I'm very careful about what names I say, how I say it. If I'm going to say something nice about someone, I shout it loudly. If I'm not, then I shut my mouth up, because I know how damaging that can be. Because whilst I don't have the world's largest profile, I'm not Andrew Lambert or James Holland or any of these amazingly high-profile academics. I have more of a profile than most of my colleagues. Okay, there is a pinnacle up there, but it's a bell curve, and the vast majority of your colleagues are down below. And I have had to realize that I am not at the bottom anymore, and I can't act like I'm not at the top by any stretch of imagination. Please don't think I'm saying that, but I'm in the middle, which means I have to start acting like I do. I do have that reach because it's the responsible way to be. And you also that can all affect how you sell. And fine, it's advertising, etc. But again, publishers can only do so much. So here is my own story. Okay, I'm going to start you out with it. And I'm not going to go the whole way through because that's quite disturbing. But I did a BA in history at St Mary's University College in Twickenham. I achieved a 2-1 in 2008. I was 0.5% of a first. Yes, I still bear a grudge over that 0.5%. Yes, I do have a lecturer I blame for being that 0.5% down. But you'll notice I wrote 2 dissertations. I did one on the Falklands War, which was the larger dissertation, and I did the small dissertation, which was actually based on a paper which I'd submitted for the Julian Corbett Naval History Prize, which was called The Illustrious, the Ark, and the Unicorn. Rear Admiral Henderson, how important were the changes that he instituted in the Royal Navy carriers and naval aviation to gaining control of the Mediterranean. And that's when I really started to think about tribal class destroyers. But that is back in 2007, 2008. So that is 14 years ago. Then I went off and did my master's at Kingston University, which you'll notice is definitely not on aircraft carriers. It's amphibious warfare. And then I submitted for PhD programs. I applied for 12 PhD programs. There is one university which I called up to discuss the PhD application process with, because I was doing quite well and I was at the point of interview. And every time I mentioned the word dyslexia, the phone cut out. They would ask, they asked in the interview, and then you call back and they go, "Oh, well, sorry, the phone must have broken. We'll put you back. We'll put you onto another interviewer." And that seems a bit strange. Chat away. And do you have any special education requirements? Well, I'm dyslexic. Second time. Okay. Better. Starting again with an. How am I starting? I didn't bother ringing up a fourth time. It didn't seem any point. But it was fun. For each one, you have to submit between 2 and 3 proposals. My first proposal was the future of naval warfare for King's College London War Studies Department. I did beautiful work on that. It was all singing, all dancing, that proposal. It was amazing. I still have it. I use it as an example of how to write a proposal because it ticks every box. Didn't get down. It didn't get in. And then I showed the students my successful proposal. And it's my second proposal. It was what valued a dark blue sky. And it's basically based on taking my Corvette prize, my dissertation, and expanding it to, well, actually, let's look at how naval aviation evolved, because this is the thing. And that's what I wrote it on. And that intrigued Andrew Lambert. That's the only short answer I can give. I'd met him a couple of times before that. I made an effort to meet him. I made an effort to meet all my potential supervisors. And I don't know why. He must have liked me. That's the only thing. And he must have liked that proposal because I look back at it now and I cringe at some of the things in that proposal. And that's what I then spent the next 3 years of my life doing. Writing 100,000 word PhD thesis, researching it, going all over the country. And I was incredibly lucky because I had similar fun with the Arts and Historical Research Council, or EHRC at that time. They were an interesting body. I have been told they are a lot better. But in those days, I never found out why I didn't get funding from them, but let's put it this way. 4 colleagues applied for it. 2 had dyslexia, 2 didn't. 2 got funding, 2 didn't. This is back in the Heligon days of 2010-ish, 2009. Yeah. You can guess which 2 didn't get funding. But that didn't matter because it meant I turned to the funding list. And this is what I always tell my students to do. I go, right, go to the funding list. Look for the weirdest and wackiest fund you might qualify for. People won't apply for that as a rule because it looked weird and wacky. I applied for the arts for the Royal Masonic Trust for boys and girls because, well, for girls and boys, because my grandparents had been members. My dad had been a member, was still a member of Masons, although at the time we weren't really talking to him. Basically, from the age of about 16 to the age of 26, so just a backstory, my dad decided that he was not going to have anything to do with his family. He divorced my mum and decided to go off. We'll call it a late life crisis. He got better after that point, but you know. I think it was fun times. Anyway. So, I write that. I write a PhD thesis. And the first thing you do when you finish a PhD thesis, by gum, and this is one of the reasons why you can't find it. It's not the digital version isn't there to be found at the moment. It's going to have to be changed soon. It's reaching the point at which I have to do it, but it's been withheld, and part of the reasons for it is disagreements with other academics over it. But part of the reason for it is to try and hold up because I want to publish it as a book. I want to publish it as a book. I spent 2 years going around to publishers. I haven't included this in the numbers I gave you earlier, but tons of versions of that book were put together. No one wanted it. No one wanted it. Pen and Sword, the publishers who very kindly published my Tribal Battles and Daring book, never even responded. I don't hold it as a grudge. They get thousands of submissions. Whereas some people say, we've had so many submissions, we can't respond to them all. And I am going, I am damn sure that's not true. With Pen and Sword, I know it is true. So I have no. And they were very nice about it. So I had to go back to the drawing board and start again. Because otherwise, well, I was a contract lecturer, and that was basically it. Okay, first things first, get some journal articles out. I have some going along about my from my PhD. Oh, and by the way, I have of journal articles. I haven't listed it here, but I have written in my life 12 journal articles, of which process, one of which has actually been published, and 3 are still pending publication, as far as I know it. That is how long it takes in history. Now, I'm starting writing some journal articles again, but honestly, there is part of me which, whilst I realise it's part of the academic criteria and I have to do it, there is honestly part of me which prefers putting out time to writing books, because I think I'm a better book writer than I am a journal article writer. Because the things which work against me in terms of my own skill set and my own approach to things on journal articles are what I think give me a strength when writing a book. But it's a different skill set, and it is a skill set, and I have to say I have a wonderful colleague, historian called Alistair Urquhart, who I know through the British Commission for Military History. You can find him on Twitter. He has only 757 followers, and if you knew how good a historian he was, you would realise that is really unfair. He's Alistair, there with a U and then a 1, at Alistair there. And he is a wonderful naval historian, and he coached me through writing a journal article on more occasions than I can think of. And without him, I wouldn't have got the one published, and let alone, and definitely not the other 3 through the review process, because he is so kind. And this is one of the things you always have to remember. History is a very collaborative field. We do a lot of work on our own, but the good historians are usually the ones who are prepared to be collaborative and help you. In my experience, historians named Alex, Alistair, Andrew, Matthew, and Harry tend to be pretty good at the collaboration. There's also Kate. Kates are always excellent at collaboration. And let's see, who others? There are a few others. Alex's, it counts for both genders. That just anyone with the name Alex is just wonderful for collaborating with. They always seem to be happy to. Kanikas are also fairly good to work with. Loud, but fairly good to work with. You will see the books that get published, they're credited to one author, but it's a village. It's a whole host of discussions and chats in conferences, etc., which are giving you ideas, of where to go and do research. All these things matter. And so there are a series of conference papers and journal papers which go through, and most of them come up the British Commission for Military Histories and New Researchers conferences, which pretty much 20 up until 20. Well, the only ones I haven't done are 2020 and 2021 since 2016. I didn't realize there was one going on in 2021, otherwise I'd have submitted something for it. And 2020 was cancelled because of COVID. But it's a wonderful conference, and it's always wonderful history. And the British Commission for Military History, there are commissions for military history around the world, and what they are is they're organizations which are for members by historians like me, academic historians, but also for people who are tour guides, for people who, if a person is a member of of their National Commission for Military History, it's usually a good benchmark standard that they are going to be a good historian and they're going to know what they're talking about. This is not to say that if they're not, they're a bad historian. That's definitely not the case I'm making here. But I am making the case that if they join the commissions, they tend to hold themselves to a good standard. They tend to be a lovely organization, and they tend to encourage collaborative work. And so finally, in 2018, I decide, right now, I'm going to do the big book, and I'm going to see if people are going to take this. And I have a chat with Prof. Lambert about it. And he tells me to meet with this gentleman called Julian. And I have no idea who Julian is. Julian turns out to be one of the people from Pen and Sword and is the editor who was amazing at getting this through. Absolutely amazing. Turns out he's also Andrew Lambert's editor. So I'm not sure how that came about, what Andrew said or did, or but I probably have to thank Andrew even more. But this is the thing: if you are lucky enough with your supervisor, and I won the EuroMillions lottery of supervisors, they can be a major advantage and major help, because I'm fairly certain, yeah. And it was all due to be published in October 2020. So 2018 to 2018 decided. 2019 signed a contract with Pen and Sword. Supposed to be put out in October 2020. COVID hits. Everything gets delayed. Everything takes longer. My own research and writing takes a lot longer. I can't do all the stuff I necessarily had planned and wanted to do. And most of all, I'm suddenly writing in a scenario that is far more difficult than I had envisaged. Because, believe it or not, and this is going to sound terrible, I don't write at home that often. I don't. I tend to, as a rule, have quiet spaces I go to write. Because at home I have my family, and I feel it's rude if I spend my time writing instead of, spend all the hours writing and ignore them. Because I feel that's bad. So I tend to write when I'm away with Justin Craig doing the teaching, or when I go away on the research trips anyway, or when if I'm at work and it's a downtime and I'm just sitting in my office waiting for students to come in for tutorials, then I'll do some writing. or all those things. Changing the habits to write at home was quite difficult. But I did it and got it done. And now I have an office in the garden, so it sort of works out because I come out here to write and work, and I go in there to be with the family. The most difficult thing when you're looking for a book, it's going to cost. Be prepared to pay. Be prepared to pay. All in all, the book's probably an investment of £16,000 over since 2018. When I start to look through the maths, possibly you can start dating something to 2017, but £16,000 roughly put into it, which is a lot of money. It is a tremendous amount of money. And that's not all free cash, and that's certainly not an advance. Mostly financed, as I said, through my own work and right budget and tight budgeting. That's the realities. The advance you get as a first-time author is not a lot of money. It's generous when you consider the likelihood of them actually getting any return from it, but it's not a lot of money by any stretch of the imagination, and certainly not going to cover that. Nowhere. And honestly, I had probably spent about half that, if not slightly more, before that even was signed, because I had to go and do the research first. And I'm quite honest, I had to make a tough decision. I'm not in a 10-year post. I don't have the research budget paid for by my university work. I have to work, and then I have to balance the pay. And so I had to think out what to do, what to cover it. And I got a credit card as the backup emergency option because I hoped to pay for it through work, and then contracts were late and some contracts were cancelled and this and that happens. And to get the book through and make sure it didn't slow down and didn't stop and didn't become one of those statistics which failed, I'm 6K in credit card debt. That's not a good place to be in. That's not something anyone wants to be in. Least of all me. I'm Scottish and Cornish blood. I do not like to spend money, and I certainly do not like to owe money. And I would recommend no one to do it. But it's what I had to do. And it got me through. What does the money go on? Well, for starters, it's research trips. Wirral Archives, Tyne and Wear Archives, Woolwich Arsenal, Greenwich Archives, Chatham, Portsmouth, Plymouth, Yeovilton, Falmouth, Cambridge, Kew. National Archives are at Kew. I live not far away from them. I can travel to quite a few of those archives, and that's thanks to a car, but it still costs petrol and it's still food, and it adds up. And it's days off from work when you're not earning other money. And then you've got the ones you have to actually go and have accommodation for because you have to go a long way to. The Wirral Archives, Tyne and Wear Archives, Plymouth, Glasgow, if you go there, Falmouth, Cambridge. Accommodation is not cheap. People go Airbnb, Travelodge. Yeah, they're all good options. Surprisingly enough, not always the best options. It's kind of like people when they turn around and go, so why do you travel first class on the train? And I go, because if I book my train ticket 3 months in advance, it's only a couple of quid more expensive than a standard ticket. And it includes my food costs. And a larger seat, which is more suitable to what I am, which is I vary between and fluffy in European sizes, depending on how much gym I've managed to spend time in recently, and Well, it's also a guaranteed PowerPoint, and most importantly of all, and this is something you cannot overstate, you can actually get some work done usually in the first class coach, because often in my experience, even the quiet coach will at least have one in it who it's considered nationally bad to try and to be tempted to strangle, even though they can't stop having a loud conversation. And every time you go hunting for a guard, you can never find one of them. So it's a choice of, shall I go and have the conversation with the dweeb, or shall I not pick a fight on a train? I've never actually been chucked off a train. A couple of times I have told a guard that I was doing their job for them. Leave that to one side. Photographs. They're expensive. Also, the other advice on hotels: actually, the Travelodge is not always a good option. Neither is always the Premier Inn. I like Premier Inns; they're very, very nice. I like Travelodges; they're very, very nice. But sometimes they're not the best option if you're staying there for a week. They are not designed for people to be staying anywhere for a week. Plus, then it becomes quite difficult and expensive about food. Whereas if you go to some of the more slightly higher up the market hotels, but they have midweek deals because they don't usually have people in their midweek. And if you're prepared and you got contract pay, so you can contract work, so you can structure your work around it, you can get inclusive deals, which mean your food is already paid for, which means you get breakfast and you get your dinner. And yes, I am quite good at living off no lunch, because I've got breakfast and dinner already paid for and budgeted for. And you also then you have a gym, and it's usually a more secure facility if you've got a lot of equipment with you. And again, if you are going to do archive research, you're going to have equipment with you. You're going to at least have an expensive laptop. You're probably going to have a phone and other stuff you're going to want to take. You're going to want to have all this stuff with you and relatively safe. Plus, they often tend to have quite good parking if you bring your car, and quite secure parking. Again, useful. Then there are photographs. You have to purchase the right to them. You have to. Not anyone else. You'll be purchasing the rights to them. So that's going to cost a lot. One of my book would have been even more expensive if I'd had to buy Imperial War Museum pictures. Luckily, I have this friend called Naval, who has an extensive collection, and let me use books from that pictures from that quite happily. The Imperial War Museum books on pictures are astronomically expensive. And then there's the book cover. It's pretty. I love it. But artists don't paint for free, and they shouldn't, just like historians don't give history away for free. We have to get paid at some point because we have to eat. The artists don't do this for free. They have to get paid. And then there's indexing, which is something you probably never thought about. And some authors do themselves. But I'm dyslexic. And frankly, don't take this the wrong way, and I'm not using the dyslexia as an excuse, but my form of dyslexia made me look at the concept of doing indexing myself and go, I'm going to be paranoid for the next 60 years that I got something wrong in there. No, I like to sleep at night. I might not actually, and this is the reality of the thing with dyslexia, and I will explain this. You often don't make mistakes because of dyslexia. More often than not, dyslexics make mistakes because they're worried they're going to make a mistake because of their dyslexia, or because they're worried about they might have made mistakes because of their dyslexia, and so they're not sleeping properly because they're paranoid about it. That is what causes the trouble. This is why I don't like labels to an extent. But yeah, it's fun. Mistakes. Be prepared to make them. You will. I didn't have an agent. I would always advise people when they're doing TV work to get an agent. I'm in Nigel of Past Preservers, looks after me whenever I do TV work. He ensures if you don't pay, I don't talkie. And that's basically what I try and teach PhD students, especially to do, because the amount of them go, but I was called by this very nice TV researcher. How long were you on the phone for? Oh, about 4 hours. And I did some work and I sent something. Have you got paid for it? No, but they'll probably invite me to be part of the TV program. Wanna bet? They don't. I don't have a literary agent. That could explain why I had some of the trouble getting into publishers, but we'll leave it to one side. But what I do have, whenever I've needed to check over the legal writings of things, etc., is Professor Andrew Lambert, who is probably scarier than any literary agent ever would be, because, do you want to be the publishers who upset Andrew Lambert? No, no one does. He's wonderful. So, again, EuroMillions lottery win of academic supervisors going on there. Not everyone gets that, and I'm sorry for the people who don't. I do know lots of people who haven't, and I'm happy to share mine with you. He's very helpful. If he likes you, he's very, very helpful. Anyway, estimate your costs. I did. I didn't estimate enough contingency by any stretch of the imagination. I factored in a contingency fund of 5%. Even before COVID, I had reached 20%. With COVID, I'm probably at a contingency of about 40% over what I thought I was going to spend, 40 to 45%. Life happens. It's not good. Was it worth it? Yes. Look at this. It's a lovely book. So already, as I said, starting on my next project. And as I'm still the author, so I'm going to answer the questions. Nope, no advances, to paraphrase my lovely editor, the wonderful Julian. It's speculative. And he's sent me that's me paraphrasing a very large email, which he's given me a lot of advice and a lot of good stuff for. This is another thing. If you are lucky enough to get a publishers like Pen and Sword, if you are lucky enough to get a supervisor like Andrew Lambert, those things do open doors for you. But you have to walk through them, and that's a lot of hard work. And you can still get through those doors if you put in the hard work. I fundamentally believe that. It's going to be more difficult. And there are other areas which are far more difficult, and nicest way, as I already discussed, there are still issues, even for someone with those advantages. Haven't yet had any money from the first book. That will depend upon Christmas sales, as will, of course, whether or not it's viewed as a successful first book. If it's considered a successful first book, then that's more advantage from me going into the second book. If it's considered a failure because not enough sell or people pan it, then that becomes an issue. And it's going to involve visiting the same archives again, plus Glasgow some more. And it's going to take at least 6 months to get to the stage of signing that contract for an advance, because it's going to have to be a lot of work to get that. And there's COVID still going on. So what are the travel restrictions going to be? Am I going to be able to go up to Glasgow? Am I going to be even able to go to Kew? These are all factors I have to deal with. And any historian was going to have to deal with. And then even if I get all that work in, and this has happened before, trust me, it's happened with 2 books I wrote before. I did all the work. I checked with the publisher. They said, yes, we like this point because it's, sign a contract or anything, because it's not at that stage. You need to go and do research. Go and do the research, come back to the publisher. No, we don't want it anymore. It's very difficult to get over that hill from being a new author. there's sort of three levels. There's new author, established author, and then there's veteran author, where I don't even need to. I just go write the book, don't care about what anything, and then once I finish the book, I drop it off with you and go, boom, you're going to take it. Yes. There are a few professors in the field who have reached the level of veteran author. Norman Freeman. I'm fairly certain all he does is he goes and writes the book, and then after he's finished the book, sits there and he goes, "Can I submit that to anyone?" "Oh yeah." Or calls out and goes, "Yeah, have book, take." "Yes, Norman." Or again, I can't imagine anyone saying no to Prof. Lambert. I can't imagine anyone saying no to Nicholas Rogers. They probably did in the early years. Now, no. You're going to say no to that? Them? Andy Boyd. If anyone said no to Andy Boyd, I would sit there and look at them and go, "What happened to you?" But this is a very different point from where I am. So, why am I as happy as I am if I'm facing all that again? Why should you be happy to do it? Well, honestly, for me, it's different, and this is the biggest point of advice I can give you. Try and find other ways of being happy as you, but also of supporting you. It's far better for your mental health. I wish I'd set up YouTube earlier. I wish I'd started down that road earlier. If I'd started down the YouTube naval history road in, I don't know, 2017, 2015, do I think I'd be amazingly successful and had hundreds of thousands of subscribers like Drakenfell? No. Well, might do. I can dream. But it doesn't really matter to me that, because even at my current level, the support, the kindness, the help you receive in so many different ways. The people who send me articles and things they found on Discord, and they send me these things and go, "Look, I found this, and this was from this, and this is an old paper I found, or this is someone in my street who used to be on this, and they've done this," and the contacts. It's just mind-boggling, and you can sit there complaining you wish you started earlier, or you can make the most of it. And the thing is, starting earlier would have been so much more sensible, but I didn't realize anything like it. So I'm just happy I got it now. And I'm happy I've got a Patreon, and I'm happy I've got a Spreadshirt and all these things running, because they might not generate the most money in the world, but they generate a consistent flow of income, which means that instead of me having to rely on a credit card, I have that as money coming in that I can put towards taking days away from teaching at a university and going, "No, I don't want to take that teaching contract this month. I'm not going to do those hours. I'm going to go off to the archives and do the research for my book." So I'm hoping this is going to accelerate getting this next book done, and it's going to be done more quickly. I'm still doing contract lecturing though, and yes, I'm applying for posts, and I have a rule that I never let a month go by without me applying for at least 5 academic posts. Now, I've had that rule since I finished my PhD. I never apply for more than 2 contract posts a month. So I'm always trying to apply for academic posts. On average, I get an interview for about every 8 posts I apply for in terms of tenure posts. You can do some maths and work out from the figures given earlier, dates given earlier, exactly how many posts I've applied for since I graduated and how many no's I've got. That's not good for anyone's mental health. With me, I'd have to say it's kind of had the impact that I went down and then went up. I found other things. And as much as I want and love an academic career and want a tenured post and want to do those things, if I turn out to be the sort of historian who teaches in universities occasionally, but mainly writes books, does YouTube videos, TV work, and manages to make a successful career out of that, that'll be a major accomplishment of itself. It won't be the full dream that I had when I started this out, but it'll be a dream, and it'll still be something amazing because I'll be able to earn a living talking about stuff I love. That's amazing! That's cool! So yes, it's worth it. Little plug for the Spreadshirt Saw. And, well, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. I know it's different from the normal history videos, but I thought I'd put it out there because I wanted to share this with people. Take care.